Austin Tech Connect is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Founded in 1992, ATC exists to help unite the local technology ecosystem and to encourage the spread of community, collaboration, and conversations in Central Texas. This podcast is sponsored by SailPoint. They are a leading provider of identity security for the modern enterprise, empowering organizations worldwide to put identity security at the core of their business. With a foundation of artificial intelligence and machine learning, SailPoint Identity Security delivers the right access to the right identities and resources at the right time. Now, here is this week's episode.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council, and my name is Tom Singer, and it has been 2 years since I joined ATC, and we have been working to reinvent the organization and look to the future. The Austin Technology Council is a 32-year-old organization whose main purpose is to be that thread that supports everything tech, because every now and then you got to pull on that thread and bring the community together, whether that's for education, for networking, or for advocacy. And that's what we're here to do. And we started this podcast so we could introduce you to really interesting people around Austin who are doing cool things to help bolster our tech community. And today we are joined by Brad Englert. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So for those of you who don't know Brad, his company is Brad Englert Advisory, and he has a long history in IT. In fact, he spent over 22 years with Accenture. 10 of those, he was a partner. And then he moved over to the University of Texas, where he spent 8 years, and most of that as the Chief Information Officer. And then after leaving that, he has been an author, an advisor, and a technologist who really dives in to help people solve their problems around everything IT. And let's face it, nobody ever calls an advisor when things are going great. If there's a lot of money and no problems, you don't need an advisor. But when things hit that fan, who do you call? Well, lots of people call Brad. But we have him on the show today for a couple reasons. One is he has been a longtime supporter of the Austin Technology Council, and we really are happy and love to support the people who support us. But more importantly, he has released a new book, and that new book is called Spheres of Influence: How to Create and Nurture Authentic Business Relationships. And for those of you who know me, this topic is my jam. That's what I spoke about for 15 years before joining ATC, and I still have my speaking business. I'll be speaking in a couple of weeks to a big corporation about how do you get your people to engage? How do we get human interaction, what I call HI, in an AI world? So Brad and I are going to geek out on the importance. We're going to geek out about the importance of authentic, long-term, mutually beneficial business relationships. So, Brad, did I cover it all?
Yes, perfect.
So before we dive into the book, which is what we're going to talk the most about today, let's go back in time. When did you get to Austin? How did you get to Austin? And what's been your viewpoint of the technology community in Austin?
So I grew up outside of Chicago, went to undergraduate school in Illinois, and then went to Australia and taught for a year and a half. And I looked at the map of the U.S. and I said, I'm going to go to graduate school somewhere warm. And it was either Austin or Austin. And my godfather from Chicago lived in Austin, so I'd visited several times. And of course, I loved the University of Texas. And so I came here in 1979 and enrolled at the LBJ School of Public Affairs and did my research in the use of computers in government and the impetus behind MCC coming to Austin. And I just realized I needed to learn the technology side, or I'd be held hostage my whole career by people with skinny black ties, white shirts, and plastic pencil protectors. And I did my research and found Arthur Andersen had a 3-year training program, apprenticeship really, where they would take someone like me with a liberal arts undergrad degree and a graduate degree in public policy and teach me the hard skills, technical skills, so someday I could be a partner and help people with their IT issues. My first programming assignment was the controller of public accounts, the motor fuels tax system. And then I worked on an electronic medical record system for Health and Human Services here in Texas. And then I started doing HR payroll implementations for the state of Texas, and then for higher ed. So I worked at The Ohio State University, Illinois, Michigan, Vanderbilt, Columbia, Cal State, everybody, even the Aggies, everybody but UT Austin, because they didn't need any help. And so I was, my practice area being higher ed, I really enjoyed that because smart people, big organizations, and they knew when to reach out. And that was a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, I want to go back. You talked about the fact that you did your graduate work at the LBJ school, and you focused a lot of your research on the formation and the bringing of MCC to Austin. So just about a month ago, we had the first year of many of the Austin Tech Hall of Fame, and one of the 8 legacy / foundational inductees was Bobby Inman, who was the CEO of MCC and was part of the selection committee that picked Austin. And you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, Bobby's in his 90s, and he came to accept the award and got up and talked. And I gave everybody just a couple minutes to talk because there was a lot of people. But you could have heard a pin drop when he was talking about what went into the decision, because California, New York, some other places not only wanted MCC, they sort of assumed they were going to get it. He talked about how the community really came together, which now I think all communities do when they're looking for a big relocation or a big headquarters. But Austin was really ahead of its time with the way education, government, and business came together.
And Cemetech followed.
And same thing in how we won Cemetech. And like I said, now in economic development, that's common. You bring your community together, all the different facets. But Austin was really ahead of the game with MCC. What do you remember about all that?
Well, Austin was a sleepy little town in 1979, 80. There was relatively little industry. IBM had a plant, Motorola had a plant, and then it was state government in the university. And so there was really not much room for other jobs. A lot of people had to leave and go elsewhere. And so when MCC came and spawned the technology boom, to me, that was fabulous because it just created more jobs, good jobs here in Austin. And just to watch that growth over 20, 30, 40 years has been really fun. I think it's a great thing to happen.
Well, and again, I'm really big on the history of how the community came together. And of course, George Kosmetsky was a big part of pulling all those different government and technology and business and university together. And he's famous for saying, if we don't do this, right, as he would get these different groups to come together and come to the table, he goes, if we don't do this, if we don't build a vibrant business community, tech community, where will our grandchildren work? Because he looked around at the fact that it was a college town, a government town. There wasn't a lot of jobs. And if we didn't create it, where would they work? And I'm trying to see if we can get some of those current civic-minded leaders to come together and really look to the future the way Bobby Inman and George Kosmetsky and so many others did 30, 40, 50 years ago. So hopefully we're on the cusp of a new renaissance of people putting their egos and agendas aside to come together and figure out how do we build a better tomorrow. So
well, and Admiral Inman was really kind. When I was doing my research, I was able to interview him and talk about antitrust policy and how it was okay to have companies who compete join together. Yeah. And in my research, I had references of Justice Department giving them a yellow light, an amber light to proceed. And he said, no, they didn't give us an amber light. We just went for it.
All the big companies just came together and said, consortium, let's go.
Exactly. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Nice. So you've had a nice, solid, and yet eclectic career. But one of the things I like about you and learning about you is you said that when you were at Accenture, one of the things they had was this culture of growing people. And you really embraced that. The idea that no matter who you were on the ladder, no matter where you were, but especially as you went farther up, you needed to be able to mentor and teach and to build teams and make people feel they were part of that home and community. Mm-hmm. And then when you went to the University of Texas and were working in, the as chief information officer, you did the same thing. It was, how do we mentor people? How do we bring people together? How do we build community? And I think that when we do that in companies, we always win. So, and then this will transition us into the book. Why do you think that was so helpful for you in your own career? And why do you think it's important for younger companies and growth-oriented tech companies today to have that same idea in their culture that Accenture did 30, 40 years ago, and that you did 20 years ago, and that, what should they be doing today around that people side of business?
Well, you need to groom the people who are going to replace you. And over time, the beauty of the firm was the pie. We all worked hard to make the pie bigger, and we're not fighting over the same piece of pie. And so the more people we can build into partners, the more successful we will be. I actually did kind of a geeky thing for the book. I went through every annual review for 22 years and watched how my partners and mentors groomed me to become a partner.
Wow.
I have a liberal arts undergraduate degree. I have a graduate degree in public policy, not a strong IT degree, but they got me into the technical training, the jobs that would build my skills. And so from programmer to designer to managing programmer designers to managing managers. And at the end, I had $100 million projects with 220 people. So, but that was grown to 22 years to get there.
I wish I had the foresight to have saved every performance review that I ever had and all the jobs that I ever had, because it would be interesting to see, where you were given advice, where you were given mentorship, where you were given educational opportunities, how you put those into play and
stretch roles. Their favorite was field promotions. Okay, you are going to be acting like a manager. So they're charging me like a manager, but I'm not a manager yet. And you got to practice. And then when it was be a partner, field promotion, you're going to go run a project in West Virginia. So, pretend you're a partner. And it was really a very safe way to make sure you were ready for the next move.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. So you wrote this book partially because you think this is super important and that it's not being taught in schools. And I agree. I mean, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've been teaching for a long time. And I always say it's not taught in college. And when it is, it's taught wrong. But the other thing is you yourself put this into practice. You're one of these people, and it's a dying breed to some extent. You're one of these people who puts to practice what you believe. And you've been mentoring people all along, always in the jobs you were in, but even when you left the university and started your own business, you've been mentoring people in the tech community through all the different groups, Austin Women in Technology. You've been really supportive of the Austin Technology Council, making sure that, we're able to exist and do what we do and things along those lines. But it doesn't scale for one person, who's getting a little older to just do this. One person, no, hey, we're all getting a little older. One person, one organization at a time, it doesn't scale. So you wanted to put this into a book. So let's talk about what inspired you. I've written several books. What inspired you? Because it's not easy. What inspired you to write the book, and what's the book about?
It definitely was harder than I thought it would be.
Yes,
At the university, I did write a blog once a week for 8 years. And it was my way to communicate priorities, strategies, kudos for staff, apologize when we screw up. And it went to 330 people in central IT and about 300 other people interested in IT at UT, some on other campuses. And that was my content. I also had 14,000 emails to work with. So when it came to the relationships, I thought, how do I organize it? And I had an excellent editor, and we worked together on it. She said, well, just inventory all your stories and we'll figure it out. And they fell into internal sphere of influence, those relationships that you have more direct impact with, your boss, direct reports, executive leaders, all your staff. And then the other stories fell in more of the external sphere of influence, customers, peers and influencers, and strategic vendor partners. And I stepped back when I finished the manuscript and I said, well, there are 3 principles that apply to all business relationships: understanding their goals and aspirations, setting and managing expectations, and genuinely caring about their success. If you do that with your boss and your direct reports, your staff, customers, you will be successful.
So I want to delve into those because I think, again, this is something we all hear. Hey, you have to network. Hey, you need business relationships. Hey, my tagline is all opportunities come from people. We hear this said 100 different ways. However, when we look at these three things and you say they work for all types of relationships, up the ladder, down the ladder, across to peers, throughout the community, let's look at this first one. Understanding people's goals. I mean, I get it because this is what I teach the same thing, but I don't think most people understand the goals and aspirations of the people who are in their network. How do you get to a point where, number one, you understand the goals?
Well, it's funny. Let's just take your boss. Ask. You just have to ask. Some people are scared to ask. Some people don't know they are open to ask. When I was the boss, if I had a direct report come to me and say, what are your goals and aspirations? I would welcome that discussion. I want them to be aligned with me. And so someone said, well, Brad, that's just common sense. But they said, but not all people have common sense. But just meet with the customer. What are their goals and aspirations? You're not selling the same thing to the same people. You want to understand what their needs really are and then tailor your approach to best meet those needs. But you have to do your research, do your homework, and ask.
And do you think it's something that one of the reasons people don't do that is A, they're scared to ask, they don't think it's their place, or B, they don't care, or what is C? Why do you think people don't ask the question of what are you trying to accomplish in this world?
It's probably all the above. I think some are scared. I had someone say, okay, Brad, let me tell you this story and let me know if I did it right. I had this boss and we had a good relationship, but all of a sudden he started boxing me out of meetings and kind of disparaging what I said. And I didn't know what was going on. So after about 4 weeks, I put a meeting on his schedule and I met and I said, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? And the boss looked at him and he goes, I've been having trouble at home. I did not realize I was changing my behavior towards you. I'll fix it. And then he goes, Brad, did I do that correctly? It's just, yes, you had the courage. You didn't just take it on the chin. You had the courage to talk it out. Now, sometimes you still don't get resolution.
Or sometimes they are boxing you out.
That's right. And I had a boss who prided himself at being a chess master. I'm thinking 7 steps ahead. And I said, well, if I knew where you were heading, I could help you get there. And my peers, who are your direct reports, could all help you get there. And we never could break through that. And luckily, he finally left and the organization lurched forward.
Well, it's interesting because my father built a career in a large international insurance company. And he was friends with somebody who was actually a couple years younger than him, but when they were young men after World War II, the guy was kind of a climber. He wanted to climb the corporate ladder, and my dad understood what he wanted. My dad helped him. And then that guy got promoted. He promoted my dad. That guy got promoted. He promoted my dad. And in the end, he retired 4 years early. He retired at 61 so that my dad would have the opportunity to get the role of executive vice president because it meant a bigger pension. And it was like, wow, who does that, right? Well, it's because they understood each other for 30 plus years. That gentleman's wife was godfather to my oldest brother, and so they were close. But he realized that he'd made it because he had somebody who understood his goals and helped him reach them.
That's right.
So then
and it starts early in your career.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait. It's the person I started with at Arthur Anderson became a CIO here in Austin of a huge organization the same time I became a CIO at the university. I mean, it's just we still talk.
So moving on to the second principle, and that is set and manage, expectations. What do you mean by that, and why is that important?
So simple technique, but rarely used. And when I was the boss, I made sure if I asked someone to do something, I would be clear on what was expected, time frame, et cetera. But I had this type A personality boss, and everything was urgent. And I got a call about 10 after 5, I was trying to leave that day to have dinner with my wife. And, Brad, I need a white paper, all white paper. And it sounded like, oh my gosh. And I literally said, whoa. I didn't say no, because no, they go off like a rocket. So I said, whoa, when do you need this? And she, let me check my calendar. Oh, I need it. I meet with a client in 2 weeks. How many pages do you want this white paper to be? Oh, 3. I was thinking 10.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of white paper that I can see? Oh, yeah, ask David. Back 10 years ago, I did one on XYZ Corporation. Get that one. I went home. Before I learned to say, whoa, I would have called the wife.
Canceled dinner.
Upset her and me. I would have stayed up all night.
Written 10 pages.
10 pages, exactly. And get yelled at the next day. I mean, a lose situation.
So why is it hard then for people to manage and set expectations? Because I think most people do in companies exactly what you would have done. Canceled dinner with the family, stayed up all night, and produced something that wasn't even what they were looking for when they had plenty of time to do less work.
You'd have to say whoa to give both of you the mental space and time to actually understand each other. And if you rush headlong into the solution, that often is not going to help. Some of my direct reports at the university, when they read the manuscript, said one thing we appreciated was you would slow us down to make sure we understood what the problem really is before we rushed headlong into it. And I said, yeah, you have to have some patience.
So what stops people then from slowing down and asking those questions? Is it fear?
I think fear is part of it, and also technique. If no one ever taught you, there's a technique you can use to build that space, then that's why I wrote the book. Just say whoa. And it's not that hard.
And then the third principle is generally care about the other person's success. Now, that sounds super simple, but I live in 2024, and I know there's a lot of people out there who the first question, in fact, running a nonprofit that needs grassroots support, I get a lot of questions, especially from some younger people when I say, would you sponsor something? Would you join? Would you just be an evangelist for us? First question out of their mouth is, what's in it for me? Or I had one CEO say to me, I don't support chambers of commerce or technology councils or other nonprofits. And I said, why? And he goes, I don't put a penny into anything that can't guarantee it will 10x my investment. And I'm like, that's not how community, engagement and community organizations work. And he goes, right, which is why I don't do it. And I don't care about the community. I care about my bottom line. And I was like, wow, good luck to you. But there are people out there who don't care. So why do you say you genuinely got to care if you want to, be in these spheres of influence and have impact?
Because people want you to care for them. And it's just so simple. When I first got to the university, I met with this 40-year professor who was kind of crusty. And I worked with him 15 years prior to design a statewide network for Texas. And I said, okay, give me some advice. He goes, get out of the office and tell them you give a damn. So
that should be a t-shirt. Get out of the office and tell them you give a damn.
And so what I did is I set up meetings with my peers and influencers in the university at the associate dean level. The deans are too busy. They're raising money, et cetera. But the associate deans are over the IT groups in all the dean schools and colleges. So I met with them. So when the IT groups were blowing smoke up their chimney, they could ask me, is this right? Does this make sense? Is this what we should be doing? And so I would meet usually every 4 to 6 weeks, like clockwork. I always had an agenda. I would ask for what their agenda topics were. And I used it as a feedback for them. What's going well? What are we doing that's helping you? What's maybe a problem? Is there anything we should be doing? Oh, by the way, we're going to change the learning management system, which is going to affect 52,000 students, 4,000 faculty. What could possibly go wrong with that? But give them, we're changing all the phones to voice over IP, 21,000 phones. We're going to be in your college in 6 months. Don't worry, we have it all planned out. We'll communicate. And then they would share things like, oh, this staff person did a really great job. Or I heard a rumor. That you don't have diesel for all the generators in your data centers. I said, well, 2 of the generators run on natural gas. So that's a good rumor, but not an issue. And the third is the main data center. We top up the diesel every month and once a year flush it out. So great rumor, unfounded.
So back to what I was asking, though. If someone genuinely doesn't care and they're listening to this going, yeah, I just care about my bottom line. I don't care about the people. I don't care about that. But they realize that if they want success, one of your principles is you got to genuinely care about other people's success. How can someone shift gear? Is it possible for someone to start genuinely caring about their direct reports, about their communities?
I don't know. So let's take vendors, for example. So we spent millions of dollars at the university every year. And I had strategic vendor partners. Not all vendors are strategic, but where are we spending the most money? And I had one company that the account rep was only interested in the annual maintenance payment, which went up 10% every year. Unresponsive the rest of the year. And I actually hired their firm to do an upgrade to the system that broke things that had been working for 5 years. And I was actually in Baku, Azerbaijan with my son on vacation, and I'm sending flaming emails to the account rep, his boss, and the boss's boss saying, you have broken something that needs to be fixed in 2 weeks because I have 52,000 of my closest friends showing up. Fix it. Well, we decided to replace that system. And we picked a vendor partner who was strategic and who met with us, changed the software to meet the needs of a mega university. And I became friends with the senior vice president for sales because I knew that he knew that if we were successful, all the other big Research One universities would follow. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened.
So basically, if you don't care, you're going to lose the business. So you might want to find, if you like your bottom line, you might want to learn to care.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what else should we know about this book?
Well, I have lots of stories that I think you'll find entertaining. I have, let's say, caring about your team. So I was working on a project in Champaign, Illinois, and a woman who was working with me and I were coming back to Austin. She was 8 months pregnant, so she was going to go back to Austin, have the baby, and come back later. We got to O'Hare in this little commuter jet, and we looked out the window, and there's a thundercloud over the runways. And we just said, oh, no, this is bad. And I said, look, they diverted us to Milwaukee. So I said, we'll get a hotel, we'll go first class on the flight out tomorrow. And we got to Milwaukee, and 98 other planes were there, so we couldn't get off the plane. And she's uncomfortable. We get flown back to O'Hare. It's 2 a.m. and they start setting the cots out. And it's like, there is no way that this woman's going to be sleeping on the cot tonight. So I took her executive platinum card and my executive platinum card and put it on the counter. And I don't know what I said, but we had 2 hotel rooms and 2 tickets on first class the next day. And she refers to that as the night she spent with Brad Englert. But you have to have some grit. You have to have, you just can't give up.
Right. So I assume the book is available everywhere you can get books, Amazon, etc.
Yeah, it's actually Amazon bestseller in 3 categories.
Awesome.
Leadership training, mentoring and coaching, and customer relations were my target areas. So
Nice.
I was really pleased. It's audiobook on Spotify and everything, ebook,
Awesome.
book, all the above.
Awesome. So before I let you go, there's a question I ask everybody who comes on the show, and that is my personal belief is that community, collaboration, and conversations can solve all problems. When I say those 3 words, community, collaboration, conversations, which one resonates the most? They're all important. Which one resonates the most with you and why?
Collaboration. I mean, it speaks to the relationships. You're going to need help. People are going to need help, and working together is really the key to success.
Nice. Last question. If somebody was coming to visit you, maybe somebody you knew in Australia when you were teaching down there, many, many years ago, they were coming to visit, they'd never been to Austin before. Where would you take them to show off how cool Austin is?
Deep Eddy Pool.
Nice. Why is that?
Because it's not as crowded as Barton Springs.
That's true.
It's actually a pool, and you can just stand in it. And every year when I got my raise letter, I had a tradition of going to Deep Eddy Pool, getting in the pool, and then seeing what my raise was.
Nice. My tradition might have been going to Deep Eddy Bar next door, but whatever. It all worked out, I'm sure. Hey, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for writing this book and really having that message to help the next generation realize that your spheres of influence do matter. It's how you get ahead. Any message outside of the book topic? Any message for that next generation of tech leader?
Just start with one relationship. You don't have to conquer the world. Start with your boss. Start with a customer, and just try the principles and start small and then grow.
Nice. Well, Brad, thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for supporting the Austin Technology Council. We need more people like you in the community who are like, we're behind what you're trying to do. So thank you for being one of those civic-minded leaders that we talk so much about. Hey, and thanks to everybody who listened. If it wasn't for you, why would we do the podcast? We want to make sure that you're able to connect either virtually or in person with really interesting people around the tech community. And that's why we exist around 3 things: education, community and networking, and advocacy. We're a grassroots organization. We need you, the grassroots, to get involved with the Austin Technology Council today. So please make sure your company's joining and your company's supporting, and then share this podcast with everyone you know around the tech community. We'll see you next week with another interview.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.